We are Rogue Media Sports.
At Mayo Clinic in Florida, we're predicting the unpredictable, using 3D printed life-size organ models to map out complex surgeries ahead of time. Learn more at mayoclinic.org/possible. Mayo Clinic, you know where to go.
You haven't heard about the McCrispy yet? Well, then, you probably haven't heard the sweet silence after the first crispy bite either. Go try it for yourself to hear the best nut sound you've ever heard.
And it is another episode of the Doomsday Podcast. It is Matt Mosley alongside Ed Werder, and on a scorcher of a day in North Texas, we were out for Cowboys OTAs, organized team activities. And Ed, it was pretty tough out there. I thought we held up well. I thought we had the proper hydration. We both brought some pretty good sunscreen.
Neutrogena.
Neutrogena did a nice job. 70 for now. You're very fair-skinned. I'm not quite as fair-skinned as you, but I was pleased with the interviews that we came away with. Some people were giving me a hard time. Oh, you're going to get some one-on-ones, exclusives out here, and I said, yeah, that's what we plan on doing. You think we'd be out here to be with you yucks? And I thought it worked out pretty well. Ed, how'd you feel like our first day? And I want to tell people we're about to get to some pretty big-time interviews, but overall, OTAs.
OTA Day 5, as Jason Garrett called it. And I thought the important thing at this time of the year was really survival, and especially so at my age. So I felt like finding a place at the Star on a 95-degree day where there was a little pleasant breeze, finding a place where there was shade and equipment I could lean on periodically. I felt like that was a big victory for me as I watched the drills.
How times change, and if Jimmy Johnson had seen you at leaning on anything or drinking something during practice or just kind of over there lollygagging with David Moore, I mean, he would have called.
David Moore sat in the cart.
And barely looked at practice, I might add.
And he just instantaneously, as soon as practice began, walked over, sat in the cart. It wasn't like he gave it, a good college try and tried to make it through and show some determination and some stamina, resiliency. No fortitude whatsoever.
I think
More just sat down.
At this point, he's just like, I've got staffers, I've got people who work under me. They will take care of that. If I
only have one person in this podcast who works under me, so I didn't have the same liberty.
I don't even know what that means.
I do want to note, I did not wear the infamous Varney tank top that I've been photographed in long ago in the 90s in the presence of Jimmy Johnson, and cited a particularly hot weather as justification for that, when, in fact, I have to admit there is no justification for that. It was very unprofessional, and I can't believe I did it. But
was that a sleeveless like muscle shirt, or was that one of those like I know, but it was like mesh, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't.
Was it kind of a
cotton.
See-through type thing?
It was cotton. I mean, pretty much everything's see-through once you start sweating this time of year.
It is true, and happy to be out there at OTAs in Frisco today, and happy to have landed a couple of nice interviews, and we'll be sharing our thoughts on OTAs. But before we do that, we want to visit with the newest member of the Dallas Cowboys. His name, Sanjay Lal. Frito, please play the music. It is Matt Mosley of the Doomsday Podcast, along with Ed Werder, the award-winning Ed Werder, of course, out here holding up well in some intense sunny conditions out here at the Star. Sanjay Lal, the Cowboys' new wide receiver coach, joining the Doomsday for the first time. And Sanjay, I want to just say welcome to Dallas and the little we kind of know of each other. This is a place that apparently you had always kind of been peeking around, hearing about. So I think it was sort of fortuitous that you ended up here.
Yeah, it's been dream is used a lot, but there was a team I could go to. This was one of the teams that I had always coveted, for lack of a better word.
And what was it? What would you hear about the Cowboys? And did this go back to any sort of childhood devotion to the Cowboys? Where did that come from?
Well, I spent 7th, 8th, and 9th grade in Plano, so obviously I was a Cowboy fan. My first day of school, I wore Dallas Cowboy jeans to school. That didn't go over too well, even though I thought it would have. That's another story.
These Cavaricis, what you remember what sort of jeans these were?
They were. I hate to say this, but they were navy blue cords, and they had a Dallas Cowboys patch on the back pocket. I don't know what brand. I'm sure they weren't a brand.
Quite a look for a youngster in middle school or whatever.
I've got no problem.
It didn't go over well.
Didn't get the date to the homecoming dance or anything through that? No. So one of the things that was interesting in this offseason is that Stephen Jones was making the point that Dak Prescott's a lot like Troy Aikman in terms of being a quarterback who needs receivers to be precise in their route running and to be where they're supposed to be. Is that a particular influence of yours and a priority that you have as well?
I think it's important for them to see it with these eyes. I would take that one step further. I think every quarterback needs that. So if he needs to play unconscious. And the only way to do that is to trust that I'm throwing to a spot on time, and the guy that's running the route will be there. And that's what we're charged with.
Which of these guys so far has impressed you the most? There's been quite a turnover at the receiver position this offseason.
Yeah, I don't know that one stands out. Every day you see, here's another guy competing. I could go down the list, but every day someone's flashed. So it's a good collective group that way.
What is, Sanjay, the Michael Gallup's a guy who a lot of people are going to be interested in, third-round pick. I think going into the draft, you felt like a lot of the guys in the draft were sort of at similar levels. When you got down there to the third round, you're like, okay, this is, and you're looking at a few of the more receivers. What was it about Gallup that was a great fit for you guys? And, you know, what makes him in this offense some guy that you guys think you can build around?
Yeah, he was the one unanimous pick from scouting to coaching to everyone saw him the same way. So that attracted us. We all saw the skill set. We saw he has NFL number one receiver traits. And in terms of explosion, how he catches the ball, his big body, how he plays big. So that was unanimous. And when he was there in the third round, that was like a slam dunk for us.
There haven't been a lot of receivers who have made a significant impact on their teams as rookies. Is he someone that you could see achieving that as a rookie player?
I think he has the potential to do so. It's a long uphill road. He's a ways to go, but he has the traits to be that.
Now, some of these younger guys getting a chance because Terrence is out with his injury. What are you seeing now? Deontay's been around a little bit, and you had some familiarity with him. And Tavon's been around. But Deontay intrigues me because I keep reading, okay, this guy's got a burst. This guy has something. What is it about Deontay that you feel like could really help you guys?
One, he's a vet. I have had him before at Buffalo. He was going to make our team if not for an injury. But he's bounced around, and I have not figured out why, because he's a good route runner. He catches the ball. He's got juice, and he's a great competitor. And he's shown that. He's made a play every day out here, and usually a deep one. So really, really excited about what he brings.
How would you characterize the skill set that Alan Hearns has?
He's a route runner. He's got play strength. He'll make the tough catch. Very smart.
Is there anything as a wide receivers coach that, you would like to have, everybody would love to have Julio or Antonio Brown or something, but the challenge of maybe not doing it with a quote-unquote number one wide receiver, is that one of those things you kind of embrace a little bit, knowing that, hey, these guys, maybe there's not a so-called number one, but you got to get it done with this group?
Yeah, I don't really look at it that way. I think if you have a series of guys who compete for the ball and everything that entails, meaning violent route runners playing away from the ball, collectively the group feeds off that. And you end up with a number one group, if not a number one receiver. And you can get a lot done with that.
Do you agree that you don't have a number one receiver in this group right now, or do you think that's still possible that one of these guys will emerge as a top 20?
I'm never one. One, it's a semantics, I think, to call him number one receiver. Everyone's vision of that is different. To me, there's maybe a handful of true number one guys that can win, play in, play out in this league. But why would we say none of these guys can ascend to that? That would be pigeonholing them the wrong way, and I never look at stuff like that. So I see someone by the end of training camp is going to ascend into a, quote, number one role, or someone we trust more than the others, and he's going to get fed, I hope.
Hey, people are dying to know about some of these guys we haven't heard as much about, whether it's Wilson out of Boise State, even 14 out here, Lance, in some of the routes he's running, Lenore from Western Illinois. I just really wanted to show that off, that I knew that.
I know his last name. He was cool.
That's right. I think I can read a roster. Who? Some of those guys that fans are like, okay, who can step up? Who's going to kind of fill this void left by Dez? Right now, you don't have Terrence out here because of the foot injury. Well, who are you seeing that from right now?
I'll start with Lance. He's been ultra competitive. He's worked extremely hard in the weight room. I see him doing single leg squats to get strong. He's done everything that's been asked. He's a detailed route runner. He studies. He comes in extra. And it's shown on the field. He's made plays. So he's one we're intrigued with. Noah is the same way. Noah Brown, super strong. Made a contested catch today. So there's a series. Sed's picked up the offense probably better than most of the guys in the room. And now it's becoming like, okay, we need a guy to run in there. Sed, go in, and he knows what to do. Today he scored a touchdown. So they're all coming along, those guys, that we're really happy with it.
Is Tavon Austin, with his unique skill set, is he a running back or is he a receiver? Whose meetings is he going to?
He's going to my receiver meetings, yes. I know he's officially, apparently I read he's a running back. So, like he said, we don't care what you call him, but he's in the receiver meeting.
What kind of things do you think he can give this offense that maybe it's lacked in the past?
I think when he gets his feet under him, he can be like a regular receiver, and I mean that as a compliment, not just a gadget guy. And the more we use him at receiver, the more it opens up all the other stuff he can do. So that's the number one goal, to get him in a true receiver position and then let him go from there.
Who's the most, you're someone, and I like your quote about you think you can teach. You don't just kind of come in here and go, well, this guy's not a great route runner. There is the ability to make a guy and help him become a really good route runner. Who, of this group that you're working with, I know you haven't really gotten much time with Terrence, who's the most advanced route runner you have right now?
Let me give that a little bit of a thought. Beasley, in his own way, he has all the nuances and he has the feel of defense. Lance has done a really good job, we mentioned before, as far as picking up some of the new techniques. He's been really good at them. Allen, on certain punch pivot routes, he's done a good job. So I would say those three right now.
What about, how do you get more out of Beasley than he was able to produce last year? His numbers fell off alarmingly, I would say.
Same thing with Terrence, too.
Yeah, and I don't know what that was about. I wasn't here, so I don't know the nuances of that. But
still going to blame you.
For last year?
That's right. From afar, you should have cleaned this up.
Obviously, the big decision this offseason as it pertained to the receiver position was the decision to release Dez. What was your evaluation of him and your role in making that determination?
It was no different than with any of the other receivers on the roster. It was simply evaluate him, write the report, as every team does at the end of the year, your end-of-year reports, and present them in a meeting. And we go through every player's pluses and minuses, and there's no player that doesn't have minuses. Unfortunately, what I've seen is the media blew up some of the minuses, but you would see all these 8 great things that Dez does and a couple minuses, which is like every other receiver. Some of them have 8 minus things and 2 good things, and people choose to prey on what they want to. You can skew the report any way you want, but he's no different than a lot of other guys. He made some great plays. There's a play against Arizona where he carries the whole defense into the end zone, and we're like, here's an ultra-competitive guy that's hungry, and you love those kind of things. And then there's other things on tape, like with other receivers, that you're like, here's how he can get better. And from my perspective, I'm doing it as a teach tape. How do I get this player better? So you're going to nitpick the player and show him, like, look, if you'd have done this, look what could have happened. So that was the lens that I saw it through. Not like, oh, he's terrible at this and he's good at this. No, it's like, how do we get him better? So I could say the same thing for Beasley, for all of them. There are flaws in everyone's game. You just got to sit down and work on it.
We had heard you had said it's me or Dez.
You didn't hear that from me.
Okay. Anything else said?
I think that's a wrap. I think that's
Yeah. Sanjay, thank you. Sanjay Law, Cowboys' new wide receivers coach out here in the heat.
And that was Sanjay Lal, the Cowboys' new wide receivers coach. And Ed, I thought we had some good moments with Sanjay, and he relaxed there. And the reason I've kind of gotten to know Sanjay a little bit David Lee, one of my old buddies who used to be the Cowboys quarterbacks coach back when Parcells was here. In fact, he and Parcells crossed paths many, many years ago. But he had told me he had coached with Sanjay Lal in Buffalo, and we're hearing a lot of good things about this new wide receivers coach. And, Ed, I really enjoyed our conversation with him.
Yeah, he's an intelligent guy, and it's interesting to me that, these changes that were made, they need to have a big impact on the way this team performs this year, or Jason Garrett and Rod Marinelli and Scott Linehan, the hierarchy of the coaching staff, is probably not going to be back in 2019 without a very successful season. And one of the interesting things that Jason Garrett said, and he doesn't say very many interesting things, so I tend to remember the interesting things he does say. He said this at the owners' meetings. I'm going to quote him here. "We just need to be better in our passing game. One of the best things we've done is throw the football, and we've been a very good running team the last few years. And last year, we didn't throw the football as well as we needed to and as consistently as we needed to, and everybody has a piece of that. We have to all look at ourselves and get better. Again, we have a history of being a very good passing team. We want to get back to that." Well, when you want to get back to that, it's not typical that a team trying to improve the passing game gets rid of Des Bryant in the offseason and then sees Jason Witten, the tight end, retire. And so they've had remarkable amount of turnover among the receiver group. And I think you have to question, I think most people in the league would question whether this group as a whole, and we just heard Sanjay go through each guy and kind of give his assessment of each player. Are these guys going to be good enough? I mean, the Jacksonville Jaguars, I talked to people that they liked Alan Hearns, but they saw him as a 2 or a 3, not as a 1. Michael Gallup, obviously an interesting guy as a third-round pick here, because one of the few guys who did have an impact as a rookie receiver in the league was a third-round pick, Michael Thomas, at New Orleans. Obviously, he's got Drew Brees, which I think everybody would say Drew Brees is a little bit better in the passing game than Dak Prescott is at this time. But I think it's going to be really interesting, and to me, that's what's really going to determine the success or failure of this team. And it's a huge year, as we all know, for Dak Prescott, and troubling to me, and probably partly because of the circumstances I just described. There were 2 situations back-to-back today where they were working 2 receivers against 2 DBs simultaneously, route combinations. Dak had a receiver wide open for a touchdown and overthrew it both times.
On some of those double moves, you're saying that it ended up with a player running kind of into the end zone.
Yeah. They're touchdown plays, easy throws for almost any quarterback in the NFL, and Dak completely missed both of them the same way. He overthrew both players. Now, were they working on something we didn't know or we didn't see something? But it looked to me like the receiver won against the DB. He's wide open. And Dak overthrows it, and that's a situation that happened all too often, I think, last year, and it's a reason a lot of people who are fans of this team are not completely sold on Dak Prescott.
All right, I want to touch on a couple of things Sanjay Lal said, and I think those are good points by you. A couple of things I liked in the receiving corps today. Cole Beasley, he did his thing and made all the plays he needed to make, and in some ways, as Sanjay Lal said, he might be one of the better route runners they have. I was fascinated with something that the wide receivers coach told us, that Cedric Wilson Jr., the 6th-round pick, and I don't know if this is just great for Cedric or bad for others, some of the other young players like Michael Gallup, who you mentioned, but he basically suggested that out of all those young wide receivers, I think he's talking mostly of the rookies and probably second-year type players, that Wilson had picked up the offense very quickly. He also mentioned Lance Lenore's name. This is a guy that from Western Illinois, which I proudly mentioned. This is not a player that I think you're going to expect really big things from this year, but he right now is lining up with the starters, and I did see him make a couple of, as far as efficient route running, I was very impressed. Now, the other name I'm going to mention, this was number 15, I believe, today out there, Ed, if I'm thinking of my wide receivers correctly, Deontay Thompson. This is the player that Sanjay had in Buffalo. He said he would have made the team in Buffalo for sure, but he got hurt. He would have, and he just does not know why he's kind of bounced around like he has. This is a player. Now, I didn't get. Now, maybe you saw more of Tavon Austin than I did today. Deontay Thompson seems to have a little burst, and he seems to be a guy the Cowboys like. I could really see this guy being a very much part of the top 3 or 4 wide receivers for the Cowboys and having a significant role in this passing attack, especially if Terrence Williams continues to be a knucklehead or continues to have issues getting back from that foot injury.
Or if he was injured going over the handlebars of his electric bicycle on that ill-fated evening that we've now seen.
Be careful on
courtesy
those
of the
bikes.
Frisco PD. Yeah. I think that if Deontay Thompson is more than your 3, then you don't have a very good receiver group and you're not having a lot of success throwing the football. I thought it was interesting that Sanjay Lal said that Michael Gallup's a guy he thinks has a chance to come right in and have an impact because, as I said, that doesn't happen very often. And Alan Hearns, to me, while he's a 2 or a 3 on most teams, I could certainly see him duplicating what Dez Bryant did last year. I don't think he has the potential to be as good as Dez was when Dez was at his best, but I think a lot of guys could be as good as Dez was or as productive as Dez was looking at last year's numbers. But I think the wild card in all of this is Tavon Austin. And it is interesting to me that even though the Cowboys list him, as you heard in the conversation, as a running back, he's really going to the receiver meetings, and they clearly want Sanjay coaching him because he's in with that group of players. And he's a guy who I think if they can figure out creative ways to get him the ball, can be the kind of guy to make a lot of explosive plays that they haven't had around here. And one of the big points of emphasis for the offense this offseason, maybe the biggest, was we want explosion, we want speed on offense. And so that's been a point of real emphasis in this offseason with this team. And we'll just have to see if this group of receivers can ascend and be productive enough with the quarterback.
Yeah, and as far as some of that explosiveness, we saw a little bit on display. I thought Tavon Austin, Ed, that was an interesting comment that Sanjay Lal said to us, that he does not see him as a, quote, gadget guy, just a gadget guy. And, I mean, that's really what he had become with Rams. I know McVay is now labeled an offensive genius for good reason, and they couldn't really get anything out of him. There's been talk that he was maybe injured last season. Let's see if the Cowboys can put him in. Now, one of the things you don't want to do, unless you're New England and you got Tom Brady and you can make anything work, I don't think you win with just a bunch of mighty mites at receiver. I don't think you line up Cole Beasley and Tavon and just say, okay, let's go, guys, go get open. I mean, yeah, the Patriots have been able to do it with some smaller wide receivers, but they also have one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
Not to mention one of the greatest tight ends of all time.
Yeah, that helps as well. Now, I'm glad you brought that up, Ed. I don't know if you meant to do this, but of course, we did have some one-on-one time with a player that everybody, including my neighbor, Ted Steinke.
You really get about to make this transition from Rob Gronkowski to...
Well, I was going to make it a lot better before you interrupted me, but I really do think, Ed, some of the bravado that you heard from Rico Gathers, now, we heard some of the same stuff from Martellus Bennett over the years. Sometimes this stuff comes back to burn you. This is a very confident player, and Ed, I think you would agree with me. This is a player Cowboys fans have a great interest in with Jason Witten now retired. It's Blake Jarwin, Dalton Schultz, the guy the player they drafted from Stanford in the 4th round, and they have basically Jeff Swaim. So Swaim, Schwartz. I mean,
Swaim's the proven player,
I guess,
in the group.
Blake Jarwin made a nice play in
9 NFL receptions.
Today. Did you see that
among the tight ends? 9 NFL receptions
Correct.
Among the 4 tight ends, and Swaim has them all.
This is a nondescript bunch that they've put together, but the most interesting man in the tight ends group is Rico Gathers, former college basketball star. Well, we certainly were able to pull that off. Here is Ed Werder and myself with Rico Gathers, Cowboys tight end.
It is the Doomsday Podcast. Ed Werder, Matt Mosley on the scene out here in Frisco. And Rico Gathers, a man was once a star in the Big 12 basketball, now has become a big name with the Cowboys, and his name's being talked about across the country with Jason Witten's departure, retirement. Rico Gathers will now be in the mix. And Rico, I know you had great feelings for Jason, but do you feel like this is a unbelievable opportunity that's now come about?
It's an extraordinary opportunity, to be honest. Anytime you're able to be a starter with the Dallas Cowboys, that's a marvelous opportunity.
Jason Garrett said something interesting today. He says, you've made a lot of progress, but you're to the point where having 5 practices a day would not benefit you, that you need to play. Mm-hmm. Do you share that opinion, and how do you go about getting playing time?
I've been saying it. I've been saying it, really since last year. There comes a time where, it's time to let the bird flop, and I feel like it's time for me to lead the nest. Practice benefits me from a technical standpoint, but, it's time for me to get some in-game experience. And I feel like, this is the perfect opportunity for me to do that. My skill set is undeniable, and the things that I could do on the field is, undeniable, but, it's all about me taking the technical part and applying it in the game setting.
How frustrating was it for you? You were on the verge. You made some unbelievable plays in the preseason. The concussion hits. It's scary anytime you have a concussion, but then when it kind of lingered, what kind of, did any doubts creep up in you? I mean, that's got to be a tough situation when you're fighting it for that long.
The concussion, it was really an eye-opener for me, to let me know that, you can't take this opportunity for granted, because it can be gone just like that. And I felt like, with me being on IR for the whole year, it really opened my eyes up to say, when I get back and I get that opportunity again, just to come out here and, dominate each day, because you never know when your last play could be called and stuff like that. And that's really how I took it. And, I was really frustrated, just from the standpoint of, like I said, I was ready to come back, and be a contributor to this team last year, because I know how great this team was, and I knew how important it was for, Jason Witten to go out on top, with a ring. And, me watching the games that we was losing, and, just seeing, where it was opportunities where we really needed a scoring punch in the red zone. We was getting red zone opportunities, but, we wasn't able to capitalize in that 3-game stretch, to be specific. That's when it really was frustrating, because it was around the time that I knew I could have came back.
It sounds like even though you missed the whole season technically with a concussion, you were at some point cleared, and it became a decision for the coaches as to whether they wanted to put you on the roster.
Yeah, I was cleared, I want to say after like week 7 or week 8, or probably even week 9. But point blank clear, I got cleared, and I was still on IR. So with that being said, that was the most frustrating part too, because I'm a guy, man. I'm so used to being active, being and playing, competing, helping your team. I'm used to that. So with me not being able to get on the field and do that last year, when I knew I was able to do it, it was real frustrating.
Were you vocal about that?
No, because it wasn't my choice. It wasn't my place to be vocal about it. So I just stayed to myself, kept my comments to myself, and just played my part.
How much more advanced do you feel now? You obviously proved that you can make plays downfield and high point balls and that kind of thing. The running game, you got Rod Smith over here reaching over you as we speak. The running game seems to be, where you have the most room to grow, and they keep bringing that up. Where are you in that process?
Well, I feel like I'm right where I need to be. The running game, it's not really my strong suit. I'm not even going to lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm pretty sure, Jimmy Graham, the running game wasn't his strong suit too, but he's a 5-time Pro Bowl, so...
he had like 10 touchdowns last year.
Exactly, 492 yards made the Pro Bowl. So I think for the most part, it's one of the things you just got to work at each and every day. And I just feel like for a guy like me, I don't feel like that should hold me back from contributing.
You being a former, and they're about to kick us out, but you being a former all Big 12 basketball player, thoughts on Cavs versus Warriors? Who do you like, and how many games?
I like the Cavs, but I feel like the Warriors got the upper hand. They're the defending champions. Both teams are really good. one has more NBA All-Stars than the other, and I feel like that team has the most chemistry right now, and I feel like they have the upper hand. So,
Rico Gathers, thank you so much. By the way, if you were in the NBA right now, would you have been able to extend your range to three-point line?
I don't think that would have been my goal. I think it would have just,
The game is played at the perimeter now.
Yeah, but with a team like Houston who shoots 27 and missed 27 three-pointers, that could have been 27 offensive rebounds for me.
See you, thank you.
There he was.
The great Rico Gathers from Baylor. So many Baylor players
Future
out
great.
there. Yeah, the future great Rico Gathers. Love that he brought up Jimmy Graham, of all people.
I knew that's what he was thinking when he was talking about, hey, I know some other guys who catch a lot of touchdown passes and don't do any blocking. You know, it seems to me that, and clearly he was frustrated, although he didn't voice that displeasure to the coaching staff because he's a young, unproven guy. But here's what gets me with Rico Gathers, okay? We saw what he could do in the preseason. It's not the same as the regular season, but it looked like it deserved a chance to happen. And as desperate as they were in the passing game last year, how do you not put this guy on the field and give him a chance? Like, what did you have to lose? They created this perception that this concussion was a year-long thing when, in fact, it obviously wasn't. He has spoken to contradict that perception. But today, somebody...
By the way, just to interrupt you for 1 second, they were going to, I think, let him in there. If he hadn't had that concussion at the beginning of last year, I think he would have been involved and would have made the 53-man roster. But I get your point. It's if you have a guy who might be able to help you, it seems kind of crazy not to bring him back in, and they chose not to.
And it seems to be because they want the next Jason Witten. They want a guy who can be as good blocking in the run game as he is a receiver in the passing game, and there aren't very many of those guys. And if you're going to short yourself somewhere, I think the blocking part of it, you can let somebody else try and do it situationally. If you have a unique big red zone guy, athletic like him, who he's not Jimmy Graham, but he has some of the same characteristics and some of the same background, that's what attracted them to him. And then, Jason Garrett says today when he's talking about him, well, he's a guy who, has developed more, he has more pass game skills than run game skills, which means he's a better receiver than he's a blocker. But he's a guy who needs to play. It doesn't, 5 practices a day wouldn't be enough for him. He needs to play. Well, then play him. That's up to you. Play the guy.
Nobody's preventing you from doing that. And I agree with you, and we will see where this saga goes. Another interesting storyline out there, Ed, and a lot of people were keeping our eye on Van Der Esch and seeing how he looks. He almost made a play on that Jarwin touchdown. That Jarwin, nice catch in traffic today as the Cowboys tight ends continue to dominate OTAs. Ed, I think Jalen Smith is a fascinating story as we move ahead. He has been a guest on the Doomsday Podcast, and we had a chance to visit with him again today. Yeah, twice. Has he been with us twice on the Doomsday? Yes. And a lot of folks around him today, including the two of us. Ed, before we kind of report on what he's saying and where this thing is heading, and by the way, that brace is gone. The brace that he was wearing that basically kind of held his foot in place, he's not wearing. So it appears to be some significant progress, even though you got to take everything with a grain of salt when it comes to him. But Ed, go back, because you tweeted about this earlier, the dimensions on this man's body. He shared some of the things, and I think the dimensions on his body probably a little different than ours.
Well, first of all, he's devoted himself to the first month of the offseason doing yoga, hot yoga. And so he thinks that's improved his flexibility and so forth and his balance. But he revealed that he has gained 8 pounds of muscle or good weight, and that his body fat percentage is a remarkable 3.5%. Now, I
don't know if that's healthy.
Some people, I did some little research online, which is a dangerous place to do any research, because I don't know what the source of this information was, but the source of this particular information that I quickly looked up basically said if you're below 5%, you're dead. And so Jalen may have overestimated his body fat percentage. Maybe he is somewhere around there. But the point is,
he looks good.
He's in great physical shape. Garrett was saying today that he is now able to trust the knee in the leg, that what he needs it to do, it's going to be able to do, and that he can play more instinctively, he can get himself in and out of various different situations. We know the Rams really exploited him in the game that they won here last year. And it was interesting because I was with some people with the Rams going into that game, and the night before the game, the only thing they cared about was, is Sean Lee going to play? That's all they wanted to know. Was Sean Lee going to play? Because they knew if Sean Lee didn't play, they were going to win, because they were going to isolate Todd Gurley and some of their other speed offensive playmakers on Jalen Smith, and it worked, obviously. So I don't know if Jalen's ever going to be a great player, but what he's already done really defies the odds.
Correct.
And it's remarkable because there were a lot of people in the league who questioned whether he would ever play an NFL game. And he played the entire season last year. He wasn't ready, obviously, for the role that they were forced to give him because they didn't have adequate backups when Sean Lee got hurt and Anthony Hitchens was injured. But big opportunity for him now, assuming Leighton Vander Esch doesn't take playing time away from him and Sean Lee stays healthy. I think it's a pretty good group. But he's got to prove still, I think, that laterally he can move in the way that's necessary for the defense to be successful at that position.
It is the Doomsday Podcast, so great to be back with you. We will get you ready and making plans as we speak to be a part of training camp. I imagine we'll jump back out there to the mini camp. I believe there's a mini camp coming up the 15th of June is when the Cowboys are going to do that.
Maybe David Irving will participate in that.
Boy, that's an interesting story too, Ed. Glad you brought it up. David Irving continues to apparently not even be in good enough shape to go out there and work out. It is a lot of heat, but still, I don't even think if they were indoors, David Irving would be working out. So if you're wondering why they haven't done an extension with David Irving, I think we know our answer at this point, Ed.
You know, another defensive lineman that I wanted to bring up, Dorrance Armstrong. One of their draft picks, second or third day draft pick.
Yeah.
On the defensive line from Kansas.
Correct.
A guy who had a lot of sacks 2 years ago. Boy, did he catch it from defensive coordinator Rod Marinelli, spewing profanities all over the place about what kind of effort was that. And then he started to come off the field. He's like, get your
Is that number 74?
74. That's our man Dorrance Armstrong. And I guess one way you look at it is if Rod didn't think you could play and you weren't going to have an effect on the team, he might let you get away with it and might not say anything. The fact that he calls you out on it maybe indicates that he actually thinks something of you as a player. But it was interesting to see that they didn't let that go. It was almost like an episode of All or Nothing. I thought for a minute it was Garrett. And I was like, oh, my God, is that Garrett?
Should I watch that? If you enjoyed that series,
it's
All
fantastic.
or Nothing?
Yeah,
really
fantastic. You know what's interesting to me about
is that
it?
like what is that on?
Is it Amazon? What Amazon? Right?
Amazon. That was Hulu Red.
It's Amazon produced.
YouTube Red. Oh, okay.
Amazon produced it. Here's what's interesting to me: the Cowboys made a thoughtful decision to allow the access that they did, and for the video that aired to air to the public. And it depicted Jason Garrett in a much different way than the public is used to seeing him. And so why did the Cowboys elect to do that, do you think?
I think they didn't mind a different perception.
I think they know
Garrett.
The public has very little confidence in the guy that they see at the podium during the week and after the games, and they wanted to show, hey, he's more like Bill Parcells and Jimmy Johnson behind the scenes than you may realize. And I think if he was that way, if he were his true self in public, I think people would feel a lot better about him coaching this football team.
The only thing that kind of was a letdown for me, I watched one episode, and I saw them count him down one time. Okay, Jason, 3, 2, 1, and he started cussing and stuff.
It's part of the script.
Okay.
Scripted reality TV.
It is.
And hey, we should have complimented you on your outfit.
Oh, thanks, Ted. Thanks, Ed.
Ted?
What'd you think?
Really, three of her.
Who did I talked to? Oh, Ted's my neighbor.
You got
what do
some
I look
Lacoste
like?
on there with a checkered Lacoste shirt, some blue leather Lacoste shoes, and some pale blue, kind of love you blue colored Travis Matthew golf shorts.
Thank you. Travis Matthews, we're both in your stuff today. Travis Matthew, if you want to be a presenting sponsor, we want to keep that opportunity open. And thank you for our buddies over at Warren Buffett's place, Berkshire Hathaway, that continue to take a long look at the the podcast.
I think they're just window shopping at this point.
Been a wonderful time, and it's been a great day, and we'll be back soon with some coverage.
But
of
we will be
minicamp.
back. That's the important thing. We know with certainty we will be back.
Yeah, and there was never any issue.
Oh, there wasn't?
with
I
that.
thought there was a big question mark
No,
about it.
no,
Oh,
it's
okay.
not. Yeah, I've always had
All right, I'll have to
a lot
redo
of
my schedule then.
A lot of security. It is the Doomsday Podcast, and that's all, folks.
Well, the Christmas lights are shining, stockings have been hung. You're praying for your daughter, lighting candles for your son. They're living in the city now, you don't see them anymore. This year will not be like...
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.